Why do you think that the banks don't want to give people like yourself access to capital?
I can just tell you like my story. So my story was 2009. We started in by late 2010, early 2011. We had a couple government contracts in hand. I went to 17 banks in Oklahoma City, and 17 banks in a row told me no assets. A bank wouldn't lend us any money for years. So we had a tough start.
How do you keep yourself motivated to even want to do something?
If I told you that's my driver, I'd be lying. I mean, the driver is I just love the competition. Once you get things rolling, generally you're in a good spot from a cash flow standpoint. To wrap it up, the only thing I would have to say is like if I were back in that boat, then probably what I would have done differently is one, I would try and find lenders that are familiar with GovCon, and then two, I would research investment options in GovCon.
Well, for those of you who do not know, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us your name, and tell us your company.
Sure. So, Mark Masters and Executive Chairman CEO at Shalata.
Nice. And what does Shalata do? Or at least, I started looking at your website, man. You guys are doing a lot of stuff now.
Yeah.
Since the time we left. Originally, when you started the business, what were you guys focused on? What was your area of focus?
Yeah. So I worked for the federal government for 8 years, and then left the federal government, started the company, and for about 9 years, we were really focused on staffing of personnel primarily for the U.S. Forest Service. And
Hmm.
then kind of in 2018, we made kind of a strategic pivot or started to try and pivot away from that kind of work for a couple of reasons. And then move into more environmental consulting and emergency management, homeland security consulting, and really just doing more consulting and training and staffing across the board. So,
Okay.
and
Nice.
then yeah, so did done some healthcare stuff since 2020, and then starting to do a lot more just what I would call general management consulting for federal agencies now. So a lot of like what I would call like business operations support kind of work lately, it seems like.
Okay. Nice. By the way, for those of you who are tuning in, he was episode number 39, and we did that January 2020. So, and then we had an event in Dallas, and Mark came out, and we got a chance to meet and stuff like that. So it was really fun. Where are you at? Where are you traveling off to now? I know said you were traveling today.
I was just in Kansas City today.
Mm.
So
Hmm. For a work project.
yeah, work and pleasure
Okay.
both.
Hey, that's okay. And also, what, you're a four-time Inc. Award winner?
Yeah, I think so. 4 or 5 now. I think we're up to. We did okay last year on the rankings, not as high as a couple years ago, but yeah, four out of 5 years or something like that.
Well, I
So
think it gets harder as you get bigger, right?
it does, right? It's more zeros. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
way easier to put a multiple on a smaller number.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like surprised, hey, if you're still doing, you're still growing, like you said, it's a good thing. So uh, let's catch up. And so you were telling me about some of the changes and development
Yeah.
in terms of, I see you guys just looking at the website on there, spill management, infrastructure, environmental, you said healthcare, emergency
Yep.
management, aviation, security. um, some of the new areas that you guys are focused on. How did you start to get into those areas? Like, what did you do differently? I mean, because
You know,
someone listening say, well, how did you just go from, fighting fires and
right.
consulting on fires? Because I think the last time we spoke, you had a contract with multiple agencies to advise them on wildfire prevention.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that's
I,
good.
I pay attention.
So it's kind of like for anyone that understands GovCon, it's everything's tangentially related, right? Like you can get to from A to Z, and the common thread is you got to have past performance. And so when we set out, I kind of always envisioned we would do the emergency management and the environmental stuff because both those are tangentially related to the wildfires work that we've done historically. So those were a no-brainer. We've been working towards that for a long time. Well, once we kind of developed into those service areas over the last couple of years, we just continued to do a good job. I mean, honestly, it was more of a project management effort than a BD effort to go to do a good job for your clients. And then the client comes to you, a federal agency, and says, "Hey, can you do? I see you've done ABC. Can you do DEF?"
Right.
And then next thing you know, you look up and you're at Z over a span of a number of years.
Mm.
So basically, tangentially related past performance and intentionally too, trying to intentionally get past performance to expand service areas. So
Okay, nice,
Yeah.
nice. Very I like that, especially considering like you said, when you started off, you didn't have a lot of experience and you didn't have a lot
No,
of resources and
no, none, zero, negative. You know what I mean? Like we're your quintessential American entrepreneurial story. I mean, when I started in 2009, I had no money whatsoever, no experience in business, no assets. A bank wouldn't lend us any money for years, so I mean, we had a tough start, man, and just found a way to scrap and survive for what didn't feel like it, but turned out to be like 10 years, and a decade basically. And then finally, over the last, really the last 4 years here, we've had some really significant success in terms of really growing the top line. So we're in a really good spot right now. So
that's interesting. You're now that I'm, redoing some of my old podcast guest episodes, you're the second guest that said something similar to that.
really,
Right. Yeah, she says that the comment that she said that they were in it was like crisis mode or something to that effect. And so it was like they were never out of the woods yet. It's
yeah,
like, oh, wait, so even when you won the SB award, she goes, no, we were still not out of the woods completely. Um, we weren't like thriving mode. We were still
yeah.
like survival
Yeah.
mode. So that's interesting she said
We're an
that.
overnight success story. It only took 15 years,
There you
to
go.
11 or 12 of which were, struggle. So
Wow.
it's
Wow.
just it was a hard living for us because we didn't have access to capital. And we've got a really good bank partner now, and that's made a huge difference. And that's a regional bank called Simmons Bank here that we work with. And so that getting access to capital through a larger lending institution was massive for us. I mean, for the longest time, we couldn't get a bank. And then, we were with a small community bank for several years, and they did the best they could. But you know, they helped us survive, but they definitely didn't help us grow. They didn't understand our business very well. So access to capital was huge, and then just getting the right team in place. And we've got an amazing team of senior managers and executive leaders now that it's taken 15 years to build up that team, and folks from other parts of the industry and stuff like that with the good experience. So just takes time, man. When you're starting point zero, like just takes time. So, but yeah, the last three or 4 years have been really fun. I mean, we really started to like get more efficient and really take some strides and take some big growth hops. So
Listen, I mean, that's good for me because even it's funny as I do this podcast, we're now in year 7, right? You feel like, yeah, I know, right?
that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy, right? To think about that. I saw that you launched a podcast, right? That you guys are doing now.
We did a couple episodes last year. I think we did like maybe 5 or 6. We're
Uh,
nothing like what you're doing, but we'll
sure.
probably do another couple episodes later this year. So,
Yeah. So what the undertaking is like, right? And
yeah,
to do that.
it's a
And
big lift. It's a big time commitment.
yeah, no, it is. And it's funny because when I looked at it, they said if you've done more than 10 episodes, you're beat out 90% of the people.
Yeah. Well, you're ahead of us. I don't think we've hit 10 yet. We might hit 10 this year. So,
Right. Well, I'm over 200. So
wow, that's great, man.
yeah. And then, but just being consistent, right? For
Yeah.
weekend after week
Yeah.
after for, 5 years on end. So it's it's tough. But also, right, it's like how do you keep it exciting? How do you keep it right interesting? How do you keep yourself motivated to even want to do something, right, for that
Yeah.
length of time?
I'll tell you what motivates me, man. And if I ever lose this, I'll know it's time for me to take a step back. But just the competition of going up against other companies and competing for contract awards, like that's what keeps me going every day. That, and then just being able to build a team and see like our team develop and mature and gain skills like that. That's super fulfilling as well. But if I told you that's my driver, I'd be lying. I mean, the driver is I just love the competition. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's interesting. The competition.
Right, because if you think about it, I mean, in GovCon, I mean, the landscape is complex. I mean, it's a complex regulatory environment, and we have, legislation to deal with constantly. And so, it's like quicksand. I mean, it's a shifty environment. And you've got to be on your toes, and we're in kind of a weird spot now where like you hear a lot of companies talk about this, but you're the biggest of the smalls, and you're about to jump off in the
Right.
deep end with the largest, and so it's like competing against other small businesses is difficult enough, but when you start going up against the behemoths, I mean, you gotta be crafty to carve out some niches and get that work out of the government because I mean, they got it unlocked. The largest are really good at what they do, you know.
No, it's interesting. I've heard it called no man's land before, right?
Yeah.
It's, and so there is no mid-tier level,
No,
right? No.
no.
So, but I have sat in on some um, roundtable discussions with other mid-tier businesses,
Mhm.
where they're trying to advocate for some type of program for that group of folks.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be nice, but realistically, that ain't happening. Let's be honest, you know.
No, no, no.
Uh, you're small up to a point, and then you're thrown to the wolves. And to be honest, a lot of companies don't survive the transition, and
Mhm.
the ones that do typically go on to be large themselves, you know.
Right,
So
right.
that's kind of our goal.
All right, I like it. I like it. It's it. I remember when we met. One of the things we were talking about was hiring a corporate executive, and I remember that conversation.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it worked out well, or did you have to go through different people? What?
We ended up, so we've got a really good senior management team, and then we have a really good executive leadership team that supervises our senior management team. And then in charge of our executive leadership team, we were able to hire someone that I had known for years as our president that has taken, 8 or 10 companies public over the span of his career. We brought him out of retirement and was a CEO of a pretty large publicly traded energy company for several years. And so
Hmm.
someone that's real experienced in dealing with the public markets, because that's one of our really big objectives over the next couple of years, is to go through a couple rounds of capital raises with the PE folks and investment bankers if needed, and then try an IPO. So we're dedicating a lot of effort and focus and funds to gearing up for that right now. So
Isn't that amazing where you come from to now talking about doing IPO?
yeah, it's nuts, man. It's been a long journey. So, but yeah, and who knows if we'll do that. I mean, we may stay private. We may
Sure.
do some kind of asset sale. We may we raise capital. There's a million different ways to raise capital, right? But today, we're still have never raised capital, surprisingly, and now that we're of a size and kind of a growth stability in terms of growth year over year, that I think we're a pretty good interest to those folks that work in investment that understand GovCon M&A, that that side of things. So
Yeah. No, I would agree with you. Um, so what challenges have you faced since we last spoke and how have you addressed them?
uh, there's challenges every day, man. I mean, the we try and avoid bidding on LPTA work, lowest price technically acceptable. We just typically don't want to compete in that environment. But there are, there's opportunities for existing clients where it makes sense to go after work that fits into a portfolio that we already have. And so we had kind of a loss last week that was frustrating. I think we had like a 350K base plus four deal that we missed the bid on by like $3,000, and it's like, seriously, like this LPT environment. That one, the margins were good, but a lot of that, we used to think we wanted to do boss work, which we do have some ANC teaming partners and stuff, and I don't know anything about construction, but I'm like more familiar with the services side. But we used to think we wanted to do boss work, and we got on a boss contract base operations support at an Air Force base as a sub, and found out that was not the kind of work we wanted to do after all. After years of thinking it was, because it's LPTA and that work is very much a race to the bottom, and it's very much a change order game, and it's just not an environment we want to operate in as compared to like our consulting work that's best value, good margin. We can shape the scope with the client to a degree. And so, yeah, so those are some challenges. Another example is our healthcare work. So we took a deep dive off the end of providing healthcare staffing. So everything from med lab techs to nurses to surgeons, doctors, I mean, you name it, for IHS. And we got pretty good, pretty efficient at doing that. Probably one of the larger providers in doing that over about a 2 year span. But what we found was the way the contracts were structured, we could not do it profitably. It was just impossible. The margins weren't there. For one, the budgets were too low, but also, we were dealing sometimes with up to more than a dozen proposals due per week, and week after week after week. That really, doing that for 2 years is really has significant impact on our BD group and their ability to respond to larger opportunities, and so
Hmm.
one thing, usually I'm not a huge advocate of bundling as a small business, but that's one that needs to be bundled, in my opinion. We need to do a white paper on it. I'm not sure if it would help or not, but um, they need a nationwide IDIQ, or they need some
Right.
regional IDIQs, and they need 50 labor categories on there, and they need to select the top 5 vendors. And it's really not that dissimilar to old Forest Service work, where rather than respond to a high volume of low margin um, proposal, bid solicitations, and then compete against potentially some lower qualified competitors, just they need to bundle it and kind of get that work over to a smaller number of higher quality contractors at a better price point that's more efficient both for the government and for industry. So
No, I like that. No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. And then what about on the success side? Some recent success stories for a project you're particularly
shoot,
proud of.
man, a lot of those. We're going after PACTS III right now. On how in the weeds you want to get, how nerdy, but we're going after PACTS III as a sub, and feel really good about our team partner there. And then we've got 2 proposals pending on OASIS, and I feel really good about that. We did, I think, the small business on ramp and then the 8A on ramp as well. We've got an 8A joint venture with the teaming partner company called FMF Pandion Environmental Company. So should get on there hopefully. And then we've been doing more work in the energy sector. I mean, we've always done a little bit of work for utilities consulting, but we just kicked off a couple large projects for BOEM, Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management, within DOI. So we're excited about that work. And then doing some just a lot of scientific and technical support work for the Forest Service, DOI, BOR, a lot of new projects spinning up. So that's been exciting. So
Nice.
I really wanted to shout out our bids and proposals team. We've got a really high efficiency bids and proposals team, and so that's been you know a good win for us to develop that over the years and stuff. So did have a day, I think, like in the last week, where they got out 6 proposals. For a BNP team that's like 10 people or whatever, to be
Right.
cranking out the high quality volume of proposals they do, week in, week out, month in, month out. It's really good. So that's been, I would say, one of our keys to success on growing some of our federal work, maybe some of our non-DoD work, anyway, for sure. So,
Speaking of non-DoD, are you doing any stuff at the state and local levels?
yeah, believe it or not, so our emergency management vertical is primarily state and local work. So it's a high volume of smaller contracts for sometimes tribes. We're not doing any at the moment. Just wrapped up some work for a couple tribes. You know, cities, municipalities, counties, and states, and not always, but probably 90% of the time that work's federal grant funded, usually
Mm.
FEMA funded, occasionally HHS or maybe a DHS grant, but most of it's FEMA funded. So yeah, so that kind of whole that vertical works a lot different than some of our other verticals because you know we do have some federal work in there. We're doing some work for the Center for FEMA at the Center for Domestic Preparedness in Anniston. To a large, we're sub to Lidos down there, but yeah, the vast majority of that work in that vertical is all state and local, which is cool. We're doing a little bit of Navy work in there too. We're doing some exercises for NAVSUP right now, I think. But yeah, like 98% of that work is all state and local in that vertical, and that's just the way the money flows.
How are you finding the team members to be able to have the expertise to solve some of these issues that you keep like you're trying to solve for on the consulting side?
So we've got some niche areas where we've really developed strong teams. So like on the emergency management side that I just mentioned, we've got about 60 individuals that are part-time employees or 1099 consultants that we can use on an as-needed basis to do that work until we get up to a point where maybe we have a full-time workload for them to bring them on as an FTE. So
Okay, got you.
yeah.
So you just niche down.
Yeah, I mean, we've got strong expertises in a couple niches within those areas, and then
Right.
when a client comes to us and says, "Hey, can you do something that's outside of our expertise?" We tell them, you know, we're turning into your quintessential consultant, but the answer is like, no, we can't do it today, but if you give us 30 days, we can go find a team of experts for you and we can put them
Right,
together to do that. And so sometimes that's the answer to the client is, we don't have past performance in that if that's what you're asking. But if you're
right.
asking, can we go out and hire a couple experts in that particular, whatever that particular thing is to solve that problem for you? Yeah, we can absolutely do that. We're pretty good at that.
And you find that the client's responses are mostly favorable?
Yeah, I mean, they want to see past performance, no doubt, but so that's why you got to carve out those niches of those really unique problems. If it's something really bizarre and unique, it's not going to FedBizOps or sam.gov.
Right.
I mean, they're going to go to, hey, Schley is already doing all this other work for us. Hey, can you guys also do this? And sometimes the answer is no. I think that's also an important thing is being honest with their clients and telling them like, it's too far of a stretch. Sorry, we'd really like to help you out, but like there's no way we can pull that off. So, which we have those answers too. So
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
I think
Um,
that's part of growth, man. I mean, when you're small and you're struggling and you're scrapping, you almost can't say no. And as you continue to mature as a business, you can get to a point where um, you don't want to set yourself up for failure. You don't want to take something on from the client. I mean, if we took on every opportunity every client brought us, we would definitely have opportunities that we couldn't find a solution to. So just being selective and making sure that you do what you say. You know what I mean? If you commit to taking on a problem for the government, commit to them executing some kind of contract vehicle, task order, whatever it is, that you can actually solve the problem for them. So, and then hopefully you solve it and do it efficiently and do it well, and then they just keep coming back to you. You know?
yeah, I hear the same thing with a lot of people. Hey, deliver excellence, right? Do what you say you're gonna do, and they'll keep coming back to the well.
I mean, that's what's helped grow some. We have some certain verticals that we have that yeah, I mean, we've been real successful in carving out niches by just one thing leads to another, right? It's like, hey, Shalita's already doing this work, and you see that. I mean, that's how the largest do. We kind of learned that trick from some of the largest that we had teamed with on stuff. That once you ingratiate yourself with the client and you demonstrate that you're competent, you're professional, and your business practices are good, it's you just want to make it the easy button. You want to make them say,
Mhm.
hey, they're already doing this work and we might be able to use this contract vehicle. Can they do this other work for us?
Well, I like that. I like that. Um, since we talked, have you had any shifts in perspectives on things prior to COVID than you have today on work with the government?
Um, I mean, the trends are ever evolving, right? But you know, I don't have any major epiphany. I mean, we change our mind a lot. I mean, we get down the road and we decide that for our own reasons or for reasons that are imparted upon us by the client, the federal government, that we don't want to continue to do a certain type of work.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
that we want to maximize our available resources for the best return, right? And like
Right.
that's what future investors want to see is have you been efficient at taking the resources and access to capital and things that you had available staff and leveraging that into the best return for future investors, right?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Why do you think that the banks don't want to give people like yourself access to capital? What do you think I won't even say the banks. Why do you think lenders and people who provide funding don't want to, like, why is that always such a struggle with the small businesses?
Man, I don't know. I'm not banking industry expert by any means, but I can just tell you like my story. So my story was in 2009 we started in by late 2010, early 2011 we had a couple government contracts in hand, like mostly BPAs and a few IDIQs. And a lot of people, may have heard this story, but I went to 17 banks. I went to 17 banks in Oklahoma City in 2010 and 11, and 17 banks in a row told me no. And I think the reason for me then was I was young. I didn't have a business background. I didn't have any credit history. Not that it was bad; it just wasn't good. I just didn't have much. And then, of course, I had no assets, no cash, and it's just too risky for them. And then when you add into that, this thing of government contracting, like this government contract in your hand, that's difficult for a lot of people to understand. So, if we were based in Northern Virginia, maybe that story would be different because
Mm,
like the lenders there understand the value of a federal contract, no doubt, that those lenders that service GovCon, but we didn't have that luxury being out here on the plains. So I don't know. I think that's one reason. And then, like I said, we got with that small community bank. We were with them a number of years, and we would not be in business without them. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm not grateful to them for sure, but we just certainly weren't allowed the opportunity to grow because we couldn't access the kind of capital we need, and then transition into the current regional bank that we have, which took a number of years to get to a point of size where we were able to attract the attention of regional bank like that. That's been a game changer for us. I mean, really, that's been a driver of our top line revenue growth the last couple of years, is just being with the larger bank and having access to capital as we need it. So, but yeah, I don't know, me. That's a tough one. So
Yeah, no, I'd imagine. Um, and not to dive too deep, but was it like a line of credit they gave you, or was it just different ways they gave you access to capital?
yeah, I mean, basically, that's what we were looking for. We were looking for a
Right.
revolving line of credit that was asset based, with the asset being the AR of a federal contract.
Mm,
And we have that now. We had that even with our last bank. But when you're starting out, trying to get people to take AR of the federal government that aren't familiar with GovCon is difficult, right? But yeah, you need that line of credit, and unless you have cash, which we didn't, then you need that line of credit to um, fund those startup expenses of those new contracts. I mean, as you know, once you get things rolling, generally, you're in a good spot from a cash flow standpoint. But those first, 90 to 120 days or whatever, or more, on larger contracts, I mean, that's where there's an outlay of cash by the vendor, right, to get the
right,
project staffed and going. And then, depending on what kind of payment terms you're on, whether it's net 15 or net 30, and whatever the billing, if you got to funnel your billing through a prime or multiple levels of primes, then like that could cause additional delays. And it's like you got to have a way to even out the cash flow, right, from that initial outlay of cash of
right.
someone starting work until you actually receive payment. And that's where a line AR based line of credit is really essential for small businesses in GovCon.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Well, happy that you're able to solve that issue.
Yeah, we survived it. I mean, we probably went about it the roughest way possible. We just didn't know any better. In hindsight, who knows? Maybe we would have gone and tried to find investors at the outset, but we didn't know those options were available. I didn't know those options were available.
Mhm.
So we did the best we could. You take your government contract when you're 26 years old, and
Mhm.
you hit the streets, and you go to every local bank and can't figure out why no one will give you a loan. So
Right, right. Yeah, no, I know. It's interesting. It's not much different now, just in case you
yeah,
thought it was different.
yeah. No, I believe that. I'm sure it's difficult. I guess the only, like, to wrap it up, the only thing I would have to say is, like, if I were back in that boat, then like probably what I would have done differently is, one, I would try and find lenders that are familiar with GovCon, which are primarily going to be around DC, Northern Virginia kind of area. And then two, I would research investment options in GovCon, because there's plenty, even if you're small and if you've got contracts, um, with a demonstrated potential for growth, then like there's options there too.
Yeah, makes sense.
Don't do it the way I did it, which is like the most painful way possible.
Well, it's interesting. I keep referencing this book that I read recently, which says that when you're starting out, right, you need commitment and courage, not necessarily capabilities and confidence. So you seem to have those two, right? You were committed and you were courageous.
I don't know about that. Yeah, I think it's just obliviousness and stupidity probably is
Okay, that's good too.
accurate, because you're in a position where the likelihood of you succeeding is so low, but you just can't give up. You just got to continue on. So
I like that, being oblivious. But I think that's helpful because guess what? The people that are not oblivious, those are the people that are the procrastinators, right? They uh
yeah, I mean, if you try and rationalize the risk of starting any business, you talk yourself out of it, right? Like
right.
it doesn't make the risk return, like the likelihood of success is so low, it doesn't make any sense. So
But you stick with it. Why'd you stick with it?
I'll tell you why. There were some times I thought about quitting, and because it was tough. And I had this friend, her name is Pamela Bickford. She's a Cherokee Nation citizen and someone that was a really good mentor to me. She owned a small business that did work for the federal government. They sold products to the government, and she told me you just keep going. I mean, I remember talking to her one time when I was at like one of those low points in 2010, 2012, somewhere along in there. And she said, you just don't give up. Just dust yourself off. You get back up and you just keep going. She said, that's how you succeed. You literally don't give up no matter what. Just like when other people would give up, you just don't give up. You just keep going. So,
Hey, I
and it
like it.
worked. So she's
I like
since passed away, but I appreciated that conversation more than she
Mm,
could ever imagine. So,
wow. Wow. So did you have times where you couldn't make payroll?
oh yeah, plenty, man, plenty. I mean, it's in those early days. I mean, like I'll give you an example. So, like when we very first started, our very first project, what we had to get past performance before we could get a Forest Service contract. So, like, even though we were experienced wild and fire guys from the Forest Service and like propellers, jumpers, hot shots, high level folks from the agency, we didn't have past performance as an LLC. We didn't have past performance as a private contractor. So what we did to get past performance was we went out and we did day labor. This was like 2009 to 2011. We were doing day labor. We were burning farmers' pastures for a couple $100 cash so that they would be a past performance reference for us so that we could get on a Forest Service BPA to staff wildland firefighters. And it worked. We did it. But yeah, payroll in those days was, hey, here's $50 and two slices of pizza. Like, we'll see you tomorrow. We'll do it again. That was running payroll for the first 2 years of the business.
Mm.
So,
I like that. That gives people perspective,
yeah, yeah,
right? I think sometimes, again, like you said, the overnight success took 15 years,
hmm,
right? So that gives people a lot of perspective on that.
yeah. So we're in a good spot now. We've got about 180 full-time employees now, and then we've got a slew of the part-time call when needed folks and 1099 folks. Another like, I'm sure way over 100 of those, but 180 permanent full-time, and then we've really been working hard the last couple of years to try and get our benefits up to where they're like beyond industry competitive. So I feel really, really good about our benefits package over the last year or two for our full-time employees. So.
Oh, what are the current trends in your industry that you see impacting your future?
Uh, you know, uh, like I mentioned, the LPTA trend. I mean, that's been out there forever, but
Right,
you
right.
know, it doesn't make any sense to us when we see projects that are complex, scientific, ill-defined nature being thrown out there as LPTA. I mean, the intent of LPTA primarily is like products are very straightforward services, right? Not
Right.
complex technical things. So that's a frustration for us at times. Um, gosh, just the regulation, the cyber regulation is just, man,
Mm,
it's nuts. It is nuts. And so it's costly to remain compliant, and it's ever evolving. The regulations just keep growing and growing. I mean, it feels like almost weekly something has came out additional. So we get it. Like, it's critically important, right? Like, especially as you start to grow and you're handling potentially not classified but sensitive information, CUI or whatever of the government. Like, you've got to be rock solid. Like, we want to protect national infrastructure, right? Obviously, but and to do that, all vendors have got to be compliant. But man, even still, it's just is I can see how on businesses that are smaller than us, it can be um, impossible because for a business of our size, it's still challenging to gain compliance and remain compliant with all of these cyber security requirements. It's crazy, man.
yeah, that's a big issue. A lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you're just starting out, I mean, there's no way. I mean, like, just the cost of it's so cost prohibitive that you know it's impossible to comply.
Well, that makes sense. Uh, how have you personally grown or changed since our last conversation?
Oh, quite a bit, I hope. I mean, I had a little bit more hair the last time we talked, but um, I don't know, man. I probably am more focused on the future now, more focused on a defined growth plan for the business, more focused on defined succession plan for myself and stuff. So I've really tried to generate systems where or create systems where the systems operate with or without me. I'm there to help as much as I can, but If I were to, for some reason, be out of the picture, our senior management team and executive leadership team would continue on and do a great job. So, been really intentional about engineering those systems. Yeah, I mean, just probably pacing yourself. I mean, I don't think I haven't been working any 80 or 90-hour work weeks in a long time, like did for years. So just trying to pace myself for the long haul and get us to where we're trying to go. You know what I mean? It's like figure out what's the ceiling, what's the true growth potential of this thing. Is it $40 million year company? Is it $100 million? Is it $400 million a year? Like where how good are we? How good of a management team can we put in place, and how far can we take this thing? How far do we want to take it? Right. So
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
yeah.
So, any future projects that you've got coming up, initiative that you're excited about? I know you talked
Sure,
about some
man.
new stuff.
I'm always excited about the work we're doing. And we just won a new award yesterday. It wasn't huge, but it was good. We are doing some technical, scientific editing, technical writing, which I know sounds real boring, but for an agency, but that's good. It's good past performance for us. We're doing some work in Oregon right now. That was for the Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, doing some work for the state of Oregon. That looks like it's finally about to kick off. We've been on like an IDIQ for a long time, so excited about that. It's some like emergency management, homeland security training. I mean, I love the work we do, man. The work we do, in my opinion, really matters, and we've got we've got cool stuff going on every day, in my opinion. Like a wide diverse range of projects for a lot of different clients, and that work's happening day in and day out to support those clients.
Right. No, I like that. I know you talked about before doing some stuff with Lidos. Any other collaborations that new?
Yeah, I mean, we're been a sub to Lidos there, and that's been a great relationship, and they're super large, obviously, and then um, trying to have some conversations with another large Stantec, hopefully, and we just got on a small contract vehicle, not small, pretty good size actually, large contract with them. They have a joint venture with a small environmental company out of San Diego that we've done a ton of work with, and then so that Stantec Scout joint venture primed that Army Corps contract, environmental contract, and we were one of the subs on that team. So that was good. That was a big win. $149 million contract on that one. Of course, that's spread out over 5 years, base plus 4, and also spread out over all the team members if they were to utilize that full
Right.
capacity. But 149 million in capacity on that, and then yeah, just we're trying to continue to work with other largest and other mid-tier companies where we can, but um, we still have a mentor protege agreement with L3. We haven't really been able to do much with that since the L3 Harris merger, but maybe we can parlay that into something down the road. But yeah, in terms of working with larges, Leidos and Stantec are the big ones, and other larges that we go up against a lot are like and would love to team with too, are like Tetra Tech and SAIC especially too. So
Okay. How did you get the deal with Lidos?
believe it or not, so that's a base plus 4 contract, and this is kind of crazy when this happens, but there's been a couple contracts that have came around for their third cycle, and so like Chet and Emily and I are like, how's this like? It's a 5-year contract, and this is the third time we're trying to go after it. Like, how is this possible? So that was one of those. This was one of those. It was like that was the second or third time that we'd tried to go after it, and
Right.
so that's the other thing too is like when you're tiny like us, or like we were, you have to find a way to um, show value to those larges, right? And so like Leidos is massive. They're a very large company,
Mhm.
and it literally took us like 10 years to like find the right person to talk to and to convince them that we had value and to wait for the contract to come back around and to be a sub. So we've had a couple of those. We had some NAFSUP and NAFBAC work. We've had that one where we bid on something, up to 3 times in the 15-year history of the company before we got it, and it took like 10 years of positioning to be able to actually get the work. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a long game, and we do a lot of quick bid stuff too. And we do a lot of like, hey, can you do this? We do a lot of GSA stuff where it's like, hey, we got this small need and we need it next week kind of a problem, like real quick turn stuff. But we also have got that long term stuff where we're working deals, sometimes that are even over 5 years out. So
That's perspective in
yeah,
years.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was talking to a guy at Res who said that he had been on Boeing's list
Mhm.
for I don't know. I think he wants to say like 12 or 14 years. He's like, they've never given me any work.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is they're a tribe out of Alabama. So I mean, they have 12 portfolio companies. They do, right, probably 150 million a year. So they're not a small outfit.
Alabama Cashada or Porch
No,
Bean?
Porch Creek.
Okay, yeah, Porch
Yeah.
Bean.
So, but he was like, I've been on Boeing's list and we've got no work for Boeing and we've been on there for whatever it was 12 or 14 years.
Yeah, yeah, that's crazy.
Right.
Uh,
So it's funny because he said that he was talking to me about that situation, and I was like, "That's perspective,
yeah, yeah,
right? For people out here thinking that they're
yeah,
going to get on the list, and then next year Bowen's going to call you up and say, "Hey, here's some contracts."
yeah. You ain't having it, man. I haven't. We're trying to do some work for AT&T right now. We've got our supplier diversity certification with them, and we've got some environmental work, some like spill prevention kind of stuff that's pending with them. So we'll see if that turns out. But and then on the commercial side, we're still doing a lot of work for insurance companies in the wildfire space. But we're my focus really is trying to grow the government side, and we've got a couple other folks that work on trying to grow the commercial side there.
Nice. What have been some valuable resources or learning experiences you had over the recent period?
Uh, I need to call back our Apex counselor. She called me earlier this week. I haven't talked to her in a while. I'm not sure what she needed, but um, man, probably the best resources for us are just this is going to sound corny, but there's so many continuous learning opportunities in GovCon. I mean, if you wanted to, granted, some of them cost, no doubt, and the ones that cost, they're typically good, but you could attend a free webinar to further your education about government contracting every single day of the week easily.
Right.
And it's just, I know people get tired of me sending them on like, hey, if you have time, this would be a good one. Hey, take a look at this. This looks interesting. And
That's
no
awesome.
one set on webinars all day, every day, but if you can carve out the time even for whatever, man, a couple hours a month, a couple hours a week, whatever you have available. I mean, that's the thing too I love about government contracting. It's like I said, it's ever evolving. You could there's no such thing as an expert. Even the experts are only an expert for a moment because the landscape evolves. I mean, it evolves rapidly over time, right? And so and fast
Absolutely.
sometimes. So it's like you can be a government contracting expert today, and guess what? 6 months, if you don't stay on top of it, doesn't mean anything. Like the market evolves with or without you. So I like that aspect of the challenge of it and the competition of it to be there's no such thing as mastering it because it's ever evolving. It's so complex. There's always something more to learn.
Yeah, it's funny. I made a post this morning. I just learned about the Federal Reserve Board,
Mhm.
and like she's like, "Oh no, we don't follow any agency rules. We're under Dodd-Frank." I'm like, wait, how are you under a bill that was legislated? It was like, "Oh no, we don't follow any of that stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I just learned something new this past week."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to your point,
Always something, man.
it's
Yeah.
always something that you just learn about.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing too that's really cool for us is like we've done a lot of work for the Forest Service, done a lot of work for Interior, we've done a lot of work for DHS and FEMA, but um, we're starting to do work for agencies we've never done work before
Mhm.
before, and that's cool to learn the new mission and the culture of some of these smaller federal agencies that we may have not even known existed prior to doing work for them. So
Right, right. That's cool. That's
yeah.
uh, how do you see any global events impacting your field or your area expertise? Think anything can happen different if they change offices, administrations, any of that stuff
Oh
impact you at
man.
all?
So I try and block that stuff out as much as I can. But here's what we do see. We do see when um, one party has the presidential administration, one party has Congress, a shift in priorities and a consequential shift in funding. And the way I think about it personally, and this is like dumbing it down, but it's a pendulum. whenever Republicans are in control of Congress and Republicans are in the White House, there are certain priorities that we're going to see in contracting, and the funding is going to follow. And we've got to be flexible enough to meet those requirements. And then on the same token, I mean, when we get Democrats in power, we're going to see a shift in priorities and a shift in objectives and a follow-on shift in funding, and we got to be able to support that, right? So that's kind of the way I think about it. And if you look, like, I mean, what we really try and do is emulate some of the really successful larges, and that's what they do. I mean, they've set themselves up where their portfolio is broad enough that as the political winds change, as they do in
Sure.
Washington,
Right.
they can adjust their business model as needed, and be able to service those focus areas of either administration as the pendulums moves back and forth. So that's kind of the way I think about it. And then global events, I mean, man, there's so much going on out there. I try and avoid it as much as I can, to be honest. But what I do get, I try and filter it by getting multiple viewpoints from different intel sources. But um, you know, we're getting in a position where we're probably going to be doing some OCONUS work soon. We've done a tiny bit, but not very much, and we're working on our facility clearance right now with the Department of Energy. So we're real excited about that. So we need to start paying closer attention to that stuff. But for now, I just try and block it out and focus on what we need to focus on as much as possible. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on out there in the world. I mean, a lot of the homeland security and emergency management work we're doing is related to exercises for terrorist events. So, like,
Mm,
let's say one we did, for example, was for, or we've done a couple in water. And it's like, okay, water seems pretty benign. It's like, well, not really, because from a cyber standpoint, all the water infrastructure is interconnected. And if you were a rogue state actor like Russia or China, what would you want to do? Well, you probably want to go to the most rural parts of the U.S., maybe the Western U.S., where maybe rural electric or rural water cooperatives don't have the best cybersecurity requirements, hack into their system, and then use that as an ability to piggyback over to a larger system, like, let's say, get over to Southern California where water is crucial, right? And
right.
massive population, and start shutting things off, shutting off hydroelectric, shutting off dams, opening dams. I mean, so we've done a lot of projects like that in the utility and in water, utility infrastructure kind of stuff. And man, it's scary what's out there. Like the capabilities of these rogue actors to continue to attack us on a daily basis. It's staggering. And you've seen it in the news lately. I don't know if you noticed, like, Microsoft's been having a ton of problems lately. Even Google's been having a ton of problems. Like, even the largest tech companies in the U.S. Are struggling to battle these guys. And so, imagine what, like, a rural electric cooperative or a
Right.
rural water cooperative, they're going to stand a chance. So, yeah, it's scary, man. And we got a lot of that work going on in that portfolio. We do a lot of that work day in and day out, trying to harden our infrastructure against foreign attacks.
Right. No, I mean that's important work, right? That I don't think that a lot of people are thinking about.
Yeah.
Right. I certainly am not. That's not on my day-to-day, right, mind, right, of what's happening in rural, whatever, Western part of
Yeah.
America, right? And
Yeah.
but you're right, it does impact us if something happens there, and then they,
When there's no water in Southern California for 10 days, everyone will notice. It's kind of like the pipeline, that Russia shut down a couple of years ago. I mean, they could do that again very easily. So I don't know if
right.
you remember that a couple of years ago.
Wow. Wow. Uh, any new hobbies or interests lately?
No, I don't have time for that stuff, man. We did start a company softball team, so I'm excited about that. Although I've missed the first couple games, so I haven't been there for that. But no, I'm just focused on hammering down right now. And yeah,
Right. No, but you don't put in 89 hour, 90-hour weeks anymore.
yeah, I'm not doing that. So yeah, I just mainly spend time with my kids. That's the main
Okay.
thing. But yeah, try and keep it under 50 hours a week for sure every week. So
How old are your
that's
kids?
I've got a 6 and a 4, or 6 and a 3 actually. So back and
Okay.
forth.
Nice. All right. You're still young.
Oh,
Still young. Uh, is there a message that you may have for the listeners out here who are, thinking about getting to the GovCon space that you want to kind of communicate to the folks listening?
hmm. I mean, like someone who is just starting up or someone that's like already doing
I would
some
say
kind
someone
of
that is has a business and they're thinking about coming into GovCon world and they're selling to the commercial world.
oh man. Well, I mean, there's pros and cons of that. I mean, we don't do a ton of commercial work, but we do some for some large insurance companies. But yeah, I would just say just do your homework. I mean, that's the number one thing. Like it's tough when you're just starting out, but
Yeah.
just be a sponge and soak it up. Figure out where you can get support and information and intelligence, and leverage those people that are willing to help you, and just be a sponge, man.
You were saying that there's webinars people could do every day. You just say just start looking around for them.
Yeah, I mean they're free, they're readily available. My opinion. And then the other thing you can do is just start. I mean, this is terrible, but like, just look at the companies that are being successful and doing what it is that you hope to do, and see if you can emulate what they're doing. I mean, that's the thing about government contracting. Like, we want to be innovative, right? And we are innovative at solving problems, but there's a playbook. There are companies that are being really successful every day that are doing this, and you just literally have to figure out what strategy it is they're using, and then attempt to emulate it and attempt to improve it if you can, right? So,
Yeah. Well, makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Um,
Um,
I mean, think about this. Like, if you were going into retail or something like that, I mean, or tech or whatever, like those industries are bonkers in that you don't know if your product's going to sell when it goes to market. You think you know what the demand is, but you really
right.
don't. What other customer in the world will not only tell you what they've bought historically, tell you what they paid for it, tell you what they plan on buying next year? I mean, like, it's all there for you. It's just a matter of hustling to connect the dots. You know what I mean? So, like that's one thing that I love about government contracting is like we know exactly what the client is spending money on at any moment. We know exactly what they intend to spend money on or say they're going to spend money on, and so there's no other business where you could do that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's interesting because they tell you exactly what they want. And even
Yeah,
if they're wrong and you to give them that, they still will pay you if they're wrong. But that's what they want, as long as you give them what they
yeah,
want, what they ask for.
yeah,
Yeah, I like that. I find I agree with that sentiment because uh, when you're out here doing some private work for customers, they'll say, "Yeah, we wanted blue walls," and you paint it blue. Well, not that blue, right?
yeah,
And they go, "Not that blue." I remember on a government project, I replaced the carpet 3 times. They paid for it because the commanders just changed their mind, but they ate the cost of shipping. They said, "That's fine, we'll change it."
wow,
But if that had been a regular residential client, they'll say, "No, you eat the cost, you pay
yeah,
for it. We
exactly.
didn't order that. That wasn't what we agreed to, what we approved." Right? So I kind of like that about the
Yeah,
customer.
I mean, I can't imagine going into another business where you didn't have that level of certainty, where you know in advance what you need to do to be successful.
Right, right, right. No, that makes sense. Um, Finally, can you share a personal anecdote or a story that you think our listeners would find interesting or inspiring?
Man,
I mean, you've
right.
given some talks, you know.
Yeah. I don't know if I can produce anything off the top of my head other than like some of the anecdotes I've already given you. But
Well, I mean, again, I know that when you're out and people are asking you, right? Because again, you won the Inc. 5,000 several
yeah,
times, right? You've written
yeah,
some quotes in there
yeah.
on things. I'm sure there's some stuff that your go-tos that you tell people that.
Yeah. We've won some SBA awards too. We won some Department of Commerce awards. So we've been really, really fortunate to be recognized by other people. And the thing is, none of those awards come with any revenue, right? But hopefully they can lend credibility to your ability to win contracts that do yield revenue and profit. So
So you're saying people should not be chasing the awards?
there's no money in it. So I would say that they come as they come, and like it, maybe it helps convince a contracting officer that you're competent and award you a contract. But yeah, there's no money in them, so that's kind of how I feel about them. So
No, I get it. What about like annual reflections? Do you guys do a vision team meeting? Is that do you guys go on a retreat? Do you do it locally? Is it at your office?
yeah, so we do like a quarterly. Used to be offsite, but since we moved into the facility we're in it now a few years ago, on site. So I think we're on 24, so 24 consecutive quarters that we'll have, with this next upcoming one. There'll be our 24th that we have, um, our senior management team quarterly on-site meetings for a week. So, and that's a good time for us to get all on the same page, and for folks that don't live in Oklahoma City, which are just a small handful, and our senior management team, get them there in person and stuff like that. And also we do a lot of tag on meetings that week. We do a lot of meetings of other teams that aren't our senior managers. That's a good week for them to be in town, to be able to get FaceTime and go out to dinner or whatever, access to some of our other out of state folks. So I like to set everything up on a battle rhythm. Probably goes back to being like planning section chief on incident management teams, but I like to have a set battle rhythm for everything. So try and set everything. I mean, we have one-off meetings, obviously, no doubt, a lot of one-off conversations, but I like when everything's operating on a process. So I really like to get things operating on like a weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, whatever it is,
Right.
process. We've got a standardized, cycle, and that gives us a really good battle rhythm for, we're working right now on improving our battle rhythm for reviewing our actual costs, by month per project, between the project management organization, PMO, and accounting, and between the project managers and the project directors. And just stuff like that. I appreciate when things operate on battle rhythm, and you have to adjust that battle rhythm, no doubt. I mean, maybe the frequency is too much, maybe it's not enough, maybe the right people are in there, maybe you don't have the right data to make decisions, but you got to constantly adjust it. But if you keep it adjusted, like that's what runs the business, in my opinion, is having good people, having good data, and having good processes on a good battle rhythm. So
I like it. No, like annual retreats.
no, we don't have time for that stuff, man. We're too busy trying to win contracts.
There you go.
Um,
Hey man, I'm just
no,
checking, ice
yeah, we.
baths and stuff, hey, I don't
What's
know.
that?
Ice baths.
Yeah, probably sauna and meditation. No, we don't do anything like that, man. We just keep the try and keep the main thing the main thing. I don't know if you've heard Coach Prime say that, but that's one of my favorite sayings because it's so simple, but it's the truth. Just try and keep the main thing the main thing. And for us, the main thing is how can we be of service to our clients, win contracts, and perform profitably, and then wash, rinse, repeat. Like that's what we're really like laser focused on.
I like it. I like it. No, that's good stuff. I like it. I think, like you said, keep the main thing the main thing. That's a simple statement
Mm-hmm.
for people.
Mm-hmm.
I find that a lot of my when people are starting out and they're coming to me for advice, they're very confused about like where they want to go,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's really hard to because they don't have a target customer, they don't have a target product, they don't have a target service, right? They're just very kind of all over the place. So saying keep the main thing, I think is a very cut and dry statement.
I can't imagine how hard it would be for someone that doesn't have that inside knowledge. Like, for example, like I said, I worked for the DOI and I worked for the Forest Service. Like, understand the cultures and agencies and budgets and acronyms of those agencies. It was still tremendously difficult for us to be successful. Like, I can't imagine coming to the table and not having that experience and trying to break into government contracting. I mean, that's tough, man. That's people do it, but man, it's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. What made you come back on the podcast?
I don't know. I just got an email, man. Sorry it's been so long. So
No, that's okay. Hey, listen, what I mean, I just, for people listening to this, what they're thinking is, so, hey, why would you want to come out and share the information you've been doing so well? Why would you want to come out and talk to people about it?
um I don't do a ton of interviews. I don't know. I admire the fact that you've had the staying power you have. So congratulations, man.
Thank you.
That's good. So,
Thank you.
I just wanted to, I don't know, just wanted to circle back. I got the email and thought, man, that'd be great to reconnect with Eric because, anytime anyone's doing something at GovCon and they have some longevity to it, I think you have to like respect that and you have to like give props to that. You know what I mean? So
Right, right, right. No, I thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
it's not easy, man. You know what I mean? Just sticking around is easier said than done,
Oh no, absolutely. No, I can I can tell you it's not easy. I know it because hell, I can tell I've lost motivation several times, right? I said, I don't want to do this podcast thing. Man,
Yeah.
but then I meet great people, I get incredible stories. And then I keep to your point, the rules and laws are changing. So I keep my feet, my hand on the pulse of what's happening in GovCon in the space. And we're still meeting great people. And I find myself that I keep connecting people.
Yep.
So the more that I do this, the more that and again, like well, I'll ask you in a minute, but I find that we can connect folks because we do have a big platform now, and so since that time, I mean, we've tripled the size of our platform, and so with that, we're able to help connect folks out here who maybe like, do you want to reach to, or you want to reach them, or vice versa? Excuse me. So yeah, I found that I've been able to help connect some folks out here. So if you had somebody that you want to connect with, I know you mentioned some of the big companies. What other things that you're looking for out here that can maybe help you to for some of your goals?
I mean, we're always looking for teaming partners in the environmental space. The thing about our environmental consulting work is even for the largest, it's difficult for them to cover all the service areas that the government requires. And so what you see on a lot of these ECS projects is sometimes there's some really large teams and that's by necessity because there's so many different specialties that the government is asking for. So we're always looking for environmental consulting teaming partners. I mean, like for example, we have this one company that we've bid on a couple of things with, and they do underwater archaeology, and that's it. And surprisingly, there's only a handful of firms that do that and are really really good at it, like a couple.
Right.
So that's the kind of stuff on like some of the larger bundled like Maytalk, Mega
Mm,
stuff that we're going after, where you see those teams and you're like, okay, well, why are there like half a dozen or more firms on this team? And it's like, well, that's why. It's because the government's asking for a whole bunch of really, really high level
right.
specialties that
Yeah.
um, only a certain company or handful of companies can meet that need on that contract.
I would never think about underwater archaeology.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's important for the DoD. So,
Wow. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
No. Well, Mark, listen, I thank you, man. I appreciate your time today. Well, I appreciate you coming
Yeah.
back on. Appreciate you sharing with your story with people. Like I said, they can find you on LinkedIn. I'll have all the connections to your website and everything. Episode number 39, they can go back and hear your original story of how you began, how the score person turned you down, told you,
Yeah.
get in business.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that. I try and block out the bad memories, man. I'm really good at analyzing, but yeah, the score guy told me I didn't have a chance, and that was the first person I talked to, like outside my family, about the business. So I was like so dejected, man. I was like, well, this guy's a business expert, but that only lasted about 5 minutes. I was like, after about 5 minutes after that conversation, I was like, that guy didn't know what he's talking about. So,
I wish if you could see him today, what would you tell him?
oh, I wouldn't say anything, man. Just he can Google us.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I like it.
Yeah.
He could Google us. I'll take it. I'll take it. Hey, Mark, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for coming on
Okay.
and doing this for us and, for giving back to the community and for helping and also for helping us because, again, you are helping protect our nation, right? Secure our waterways. And so servicing all the different agencies, that is work that you're protecting the war fighter, but you're also protecting the country, right? And you're
Yeah.
in our properties. And so I think a lot of us, we go to sleep and we rest our head on our pillows, and we have no idea that people like you are back here doing all this great work. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Work that matters, you might say.
yeah, work that matters. So, no, anything you want to say, closing words to the people listening?
No, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. Sorry it's been so long. I'm glad we could reconnect. And yeah, maybe maybe my experience provides value for someone, hopefully so. But yeah, we're glad to be part of the community.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you, sir.
Mhm.